Do you ever find yourself watching someone you love and feeling that quiet, heavy fear in your chest? Not panic, not drama, just a slow realization that something is changing. And then comes the guilt, because part of you wonders, am I imagining this? Another part whispers, I should have noticed sooner. And a third part, maybe the loudest part, doesn't want to say any of it out loud, because saying it feels like inviting it closer. If that's where you are right now, I want you to breathe with me for a moment. You're not cold-hearted for wanting to understand. You're not giving up by preparing. You're doing what loving people do. You're trying to meet reality with tenderness. But what if I told you the body often gives gentle signals long before a crisis? And those signals, when understood, can help you respond with more comfort, more dignity, and fewer regrets. By the end of this video, you'll understand 5 subtle signs an elderly person may be entering their final year, what they can look like in real life, why they happen inside the aging body, and what you can do that truly helps, even when you can't fix everything. And as we talk, please remember, none of these signs can predict an exact timeline, and many symptoms can have treatable causes. So think of this as a caring conversation, not a verdict. The first sign is a quiet but meaningful one, unintentional weight loss and a steady loss of strength. Think of someone like Eleanor, 83. She's always been small, so at first no one worries, but then her wedding ring starts slipping. Her sleeves hang looser. She begins leaving food on the plate, not because she's stubborn, but because she's simply done after a few bites. Her family tries to tempt her with favorites. They bring pie, soup, little treats. And Eleanor smiles politely, but the appetite that used to live in her body just isn't showing up anymore. Here's the why in plain language. In older adults, unintentional weight loss is not just about calories. It can be tied to chronic illness, inflammation, changes in digestion, loss of muscle, depression, swallowing problems, medication side effects, and the body's overall ability to use nutrients. When muscle mass fades, balance worsens, falls become more likely, and resilience drops. That's why doctors take it seriously when an older adult loses a noticeable percentage of weight without trying. What helps most in this season is not pressure, it's comfort and strategy. Smaller portions more often, softer foods if chewing is tiring, favorite flavors, warm drinks, and just as important, letting meals be about connection, not conflict. If your loved one is losing weight quickly, or seems weaker week by week, it's a good moment to talk with their clinician about what might be driving it, what can be treated, and whether supportive care should be added sooner rather than later. And that leads into the second sign, because once the body is struggling to maintain itself, you'll often see it here next. Deep, persistent fatigue that rest doesn't truly relieve. Picture Frank, 79. A year ago, he walked to the mailbox every morning. Now, just getting dressed feels like climbing a hill. He sits down halfway through putting on his socks. He naps more, not out of laziness, but because his body seems to be rationing energy like it's become precious. And what's heartbreaking is that Frank knows it too. He apologizes. He says, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just tired. The mechanism is simple and also profound. As people near the end of life, especially with heart, lung, kidney disease, cancer, or advanced frailty, the body becomes less efficient at delivering oxygen and energy to the muscles and brain. Sleep increases, stamina decreases. Even conversation can feel like work. Fatigue is common in serious illness and at the end of life, and it's not a character flaw. It's often the body conserving what it has left. If you're supporting someone in this stage, one of the kindest things you can do is shrink the day. Fewer appointments, more rest breaks, a chair in every room they use often. Help them sit to dress. And let them keep dignity by choosing what matters most. Maybe they save their energy for a grandchild's visit, a phone call with an old friend, or simply sitting outside with a blanket and a warm cup in their hands. Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever watched someone you love sleep more and do less, and felt unsure whether to encourage them or simply let them rest? If you feel comfortable, share what that's been like for you in the comments. You may be helping someone else feel less alone. Now, When fatigue deepens, something else often follows, not always dramatically, but noticeably over time. It's the third sign: increasing confusion, mental fog, or a quiet emotional withdrawal. Imagine Rosa, 86. She used to follow every story at the dinner table. Lately, she loses the thread mid-sentence. She repeats questions. She looks around her own living room like it's slightly unfamiliar. Or maybe it's not confusion so much as retreat. She's physically present, but less interested in the outside world. The TV stays off. The phone rings, and she doesn't reach for it. And family members can feel rejected, even when no rejection is intended. Here's what's happening underneath. The brain is sensitive to changes in oxygen, circulation, infection, dehydration, and medication effects. In older adults, an infection, especially something like a urinary tract infection, may show up first as confusion or sudden not acting like themselves, long before a fever appears. And as the body weakens overall, the effort required to process noise, conversation, and stimulation becomes too much. So many elders simplify their world. They turn inward. This can be part of the natural process, and it can also signal a medical problem worth evaluating. What helps is not arguing with their reality. It's speaking slowly, keeping choices simple, reducing overwhelm, and offering reassurance through presence more than words. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is, "You're safe, I'm right here." And right around the middle of this conversation, I want to offer an invitation, because if you're the kind of person who watches videos like this, you're probably trying to protect your future and your family's peace. If you'd like, you can join us here by subscribing, not as a button to press, but as a way of staying connected to calm, practical guidance for the road ahead. You don't have to walk these seasons without a wise voice nearby. Now, there's another shift that families often mistake as bad luck, when it may actually be the body showing its limits. The fourth sign is frequent infections, or wounds that heal slowly. Think about Harold, 82. He used to bounce back from a cold in a few days. Now a simple cough lingers for weeks. A small scrape on his shin takes forever to close. Bruises look darker, last longer. If he's less mobile, pressure sores become a concern. And when he does get sick, the recovery seems to take more out of him each time, like he never returns to the baseline he had before. Here's the why. Immune function tends to weaken with age, and chronic illness can further reduce the body's ability to fight off infection and repair tissue. Circulation can slow, nutrition can drop, mobility can decline. All of that makes healing harder. Near the end of life, many people experience more infections and less resilience, not because they aren't trying, but because the body's systems are working with fewer resources. This is where compassionate realism matters. Of course, we treat what can be treated, but we also ask the deeper question, what is the goal now? Sometimes the goal is aggressive care. Sometimes the goal is comfort, time at home, fewer hospital trips, and the gentlest path possible. If infections are repeating, it may be time to ask about palliative care support or hospice eligibility, because those services don't mean no care. They often mean better care for comfort and dignity. And that brings us to the fifth sign, the one that can look frightening if you've never been taught what it means. Changes in breathing patterns and changes in circulation. Picture Lillian, 88. You notice her breathing is different. Sometimes it's shallow. Sometimes there are pauses. Sometimes it speeds up and slows down in waves. Her hands and feet feel cold even when the room is warm. Her skin looks pale or slightly bluish around the fingertips. She starts preferring to sleep propped up because lying flat makes her feel short of breath. In the later stages of life, breathing can change because the brain and body are regulating oxygen differently. Muscles are weaker, and fluid can sometimes build up. One pattern you may hear described is Cheney-Stokes respiration, cycles where breathing becomes deeper and faster, then slower, with pauses in between. It's classically associated with certain heart and neurological conditions, and it's also seen near the end of life. Seeing it doesn't automatically mean hours, but it is a sign the body is under strain and transitioning. Meanwhile, circulation shifts because the body prioritizes blood flow to vital organs, reducing it to the hands, feet, nose, and ears, so extremities cool and color changes appear. These are among the changes families commonly observe as death approaches. What helps here is comfort-focused support: a calm room, gentle airflow, a fan, a humidifier if dryness is bothering them, soft blankets for cool limbs, and medical guidance for oxygen or medication if appropriate. If breathing changes come with chest pain, severe distress, or a sudden dramatic shift, treat it as urgent and call for medical help. But when these patterns develop gradually in a frail elder with advanced illness, the most meaningful intervention is often presence, being there, speaking softly, and reducing fear. And I want to place a gentle question right here because this one touches many hearts. Have you ever sat beside someone and listened to their breathing change and felt helpless or afraid you were missing something? If you'd like to share, tell me what you noticed or what you wish someone had told you sooner. Your story may bring comfort to another family reading quietly in the background. Now, before we close, I want to say something that matters. These 5 signs, weight loss, deep fatigue, cognitive changes or withdrawal, frequent infections and slow healing, and changes in breathing or circulation, are not a checklist that proves anything. They are signals that deserve attention, compassion, and wise support. Sometimes they point to a treatable problem. Sometimes they point to a larger transition. Either way, noticing them early gives you something precious: time. Time to ask better questions at medical appointments. Time to organize practical needs. Time to say what needs saying. Time to make the ordinary moments feel sacred, because sometimes the last year is not made of grand speeches. Sometimes it's made of warm tea, familiar music, a hand held in silence, and the steady message, you are not alone. If you'd like a few gentle, trustworthy resources to watch after this, there are hospice nurses who explain these changes calmly and clearly, without sensationalism. One example is Signs That Are Present When Someone is Dying by hospice nurse Julie, and another is Hospice Nurse Explains the Phases of the End of Life from VNS Health. And if you're here because you're caring for someone right now, let me leave you with this. You don't have to be perfect to be deeply loving. You don't have to have the right words to bring peace. When the body is slowing down, the greatest medicine you can offer is steadiness, gentle care, honest preparation, and a calm heart beside them. That is what dignity looks like. That is what love looks like. If you want, tell me in the comments who you're thinking about today. Just a first name is fine. I read them, and our community does too. And sometimes, being witnessed is its own kind of healing.